Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today, we are going to look at what I consider to be Harley's second best bike, right behind the Fat Boy, and that is the Road King Special. But as per usual, before we start, we need to have a look at a viewer bike. This is Blair's 2007 Fat Boy. On this bike, we have Kraus risers, Saddleman seat, Legend suspension, custom pegs, foot controls, covers, grips, and check out that front end. We have an FX front end rather than the usual FL. So thanks to Blair for sending that in, and I hope the weather is good out there on the West Coast. And if you want to see your bike in a video, send me a pic. My email address is in the description to this video. So here we are at the local dealer, Prairie Harley Davidson, located just outside of Regina, Saskatchewan. And we have the 2024 Road King Special. And what can I say about this bike? As I said at the start of this video, this is, in my opinion, the second best Harley the company makes, right behind the Fat Boy, of course. Some folks may not agree, but that's my take anyway. The only complaint I have with the Road King is the badging. I prefer the older V-style decaling. But let's have a look at this beauty. This specific model is in the base billiard gray. It also comes in 3 other colors: vivid black, red rock, and white onyx pearl. The special only comes in the black trim as well. Now, unfortunately, Harley has done away with the standard, so no Road Kings are available in chrome. The bike has the 114 cubic inch Milwaukee 8 engine, putting out 95 horsepower and 121 foot-pounds of torque. This is an almost 8-foot long bike with a seat height of 27 inches and ground clearance of about 5 inches. It also has a running weight of 806 pounds, and as it is a touring model, it has a fuel capacity of 6 gallons. We have a 19-inch wheel in the front with a 130 tire. In the back, we have an 18-inch wheel with a 180 tire. Big LED headlight, gauges on the dash, saddlebags, but I could talk all day about this bike, so let's just get on it and go, because I'm excited to try this baby out. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it has been a bit of a pain in the butt to get this video made. Because of our weather, I've had to reschedule this ride 3 times. It has not been very nice spring so far. A lot of rain and even more wind. And it seems like the only time there's not a gale force wind is when it's pouring rain. But today is absolutely beautiful. And I also plan on doing a video comparing this bike to my Fat Boy. Hopefully that will be out next week. But on to this bike. So the first thing I noticed on this bike was, just like on the other touring models, the weight. However, there is a difference here between the weight felt on the Road Glide and Street Glide. Now, there's only about a 5-pound weight difference between the Street Glide, and the Road Glide is actually listed as a little lighter, but the Road King sits lower to the ground with a clearance of 5 inches, with the seat height of 27 inches. So although it feels heavier than what I'm used to, lifting it off the side stand feels a little more like my Fat Boy and less like the Glides, even though this bike outweighs the Fatty by about 100 pounds. It also helps to not have the weight of a fairing mounted on the handlebars. Now, the other thing I noticed about this bike right off the bat was how smooth it is of a ride. Very, very smooth. And unlike the Glides, it has less vibration at a stop, even though it does have the rubber-mounted engine. Power delivery on the King is adequate. It's definitely not as snappy as the glides, which is to be expected as this bike has the 114 cubic inch engine rather than the 117. So this bike puts out a little less horsepower and torque while weighing roughly the same. Also, as this bike is your stripped down tourer, it does not have the electronics and all the ride modes to customize your ride to your liking. But make no mistake, this bike makes more than enough power to get you into trouble. As for comfort, this bike is nice. The seat is not quite as comfortable as the glides, but it is quite good nonetheless. It's a little bit of a almost bucket style seat, and it has a nice little bit of back support so you don't feel like you're sliding off the back. The bike has a very nice sitting position, and the mini apes work perfectly for my size, and I'm about 6 feet tall. Now, if we're going to talk about comfort, we also must talk about wind protection, which this bike has none of. Luckily, it's a somewhat calm day today. This is one thing that kind of bothers me with the Special. This bike is meant to tour, and every other touring model Harley offers has wind protection of some sort. Now, you can obviously buy a windshield for this bike, but it does not make sense to me to sell a touring model with absolutely no wind protection. If it is meant to put mile after mile on it, you would think they would add a shield to add to the rider comfort. I believe the standard models used to come with one, but they have since done away with that model, at least for now. So expect a good arm and core workout if you plan to ride this bike in its stock form when it's a fairly breezy day out. As for handling, this bike handles very well for an 800-pound motorcycle. It's not a canyon carver, but with a lean angle of 32 degrees to the right and 31 to the left, it's not bad at taking corners. The lower center of gravity also helps to lean into the curves a little better. And the suspension, in my opinion, is not quite as good as the Softails, but it's perfectly fine nonetheless and seems to soak up the bumps pretty well. The saddlebags on this bike are stretched hard shell bags. They lock well and seem fairly sturdy. They have around 2.5 cubic feet of storage, so plenty of room for your knickknacks on a short trip. Shifting and braking on this bike I found to be pretty much the same as every Harley I've been on. The transmission was very smooth, with the classic Harley clunk when putting it into gear, and no issue finding neutral on this bike either. The braking is there when you need it, no more and no less. The King has dual discs in the front, so hard stopping is not going to be a problem. Another thing that is pretty much the same across Harley models is the stock sound. The bike has a 2-into-1-into-2 dual exhaust with tapered mufflers, and with all stock pipes, it sounds very quiet. The first thing I would do if I were to get this bike would be to install a good set of aftermarket pipes. Now, there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to the electronics, as this is your stripped down touring model that does not come with an infotainment system in a fairing. It does have a large gauge in the dash that shows your digital odometer, trip A and B, fuel range and gear indicator, as well as an analog speedo. Now, this bike sticks a little bit to its classic design with an indicator bar below the speedo and a locking ignition switch below that. Also of note is that this bike still uses an analog fuel gauge, which is located in the left side gas cap. So what else can you say about the Road King? This is your essential stripped down touring model, which is an absolute classic in the Harley lineup, and I think it does not get the respect it deserves. In my opinion, the main drawback I have is the lack of a windshield. As a touring model, I do find it strange that Harley would not offer a stock shield. They could easily have a detachable windshield that could be smoked out if they wanted to keep the blackout look. I cannot say that I am fond of the paint either, as it is very plain and basic. No pinstripes, no nothing. Just a very basic paint job. And I've already mentioned the badging. I think that Harley could have put a little more thought into it rather than just slapping on a regular bar and shield logo. Other than that, though, I think the overall styling on this bike is great. It's a bike you really need to see in person because pictures do not do it justice. And although I find it strange for Harley to still be using this setup, I find the ignition switch in the dash and the fuel gauge in the gas cap to be a nice little nod to the bike's previous heritage. Overall, I find the bike to be a perfect middle ground between kind of a cruiser and a tourer. It has the stripped down looks of a cruiser with saddlebags for luggage and the comfort of a touring model. And like I said before, this bike is a very, very smooth ride with little vibration at stops. At this point, if I was going to get another bike and it couldn't be a Fat Boy, the Road King would definitely be my bike of choice, hands down. It's just an all-around classic Harley Davidson. Now, before I go, I have to give another shout out again to Prairie Harley Davidson for letting me get out on this bike, as well as putting up with the few cancellations that came up due to bad weather. They are an independent, locally owned, family-run dealership, which you don't see much of anymore. So if you are in the area, or even if you're not, give them a shout, check them out. I will put their contact information in the description to this video. So anyway, that is it for today, folks. Hope you liked having a little look at the 2024 Road King special, and we will see you in the next one.